Okay, I think I'm sure more people will be joining in shortly. Let's kick this off. So, uh, thank you for joining in today on Thursday evening. I'm sure a lot of you have had a long day, so we'll try to make sure that whoever has joined, it's really, really worth your time. Um, our goal for today is to help people understand how they can make a transition from an engineering background to product management. So question. It's a topic that I frequently come across in my day-to-day work. And with that, I just want to share a bit about myself before I introduce our speakers for today, Mokshita and Nikhil. So I'm the founder of Pivot, which is an early stage career tech startup. We help people make career transitions. So if you're thinking about a new role, a new industry, or just moving up in your organization, let's say from IC role to a manager role, these are all the areas that we cover, and we make sure that you have a smooth and successful transition to land your target role. That's Pivot. You can check us out at mypivot.work. That's enough about us. I want to introduce our speakers. I'm very, very excited to have Nikhil and Mokshita in the house today. Thanks to both of you for making time for this. I know, Nikhil, it's very early for you in Silicon Valley. And Mokshita, I know you probably have had a long day, so really appreciate you doing this. I can obviously share high level stuff about your background and your journey, but I think it would be best if maybe you can tell us just a bit about your journeys, and that will really help us get started. So Mokshita, I'll turn it over to you. Maybe just tell us a bit about how you started your career and the transition you've made from engineering to PM.
Sure. Am I audible, clear, loud?
Yes.
Thank you, Arjun, for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here. Talking about my career and my journey till now. Currently, I'm working in the digital products and transformation team at PwC. I lead the technology, media, and telecom sector for the India firm here. And I help my clients reimagine their existing business models, innovate, by leveraging the power of emerging technologies and trends, and deliver some meaningful products to them. Previously, I was working with Shell in the oil, gas, and energy sector. I developed a lot of sustainable technology products while I was at Shell. Uh, Having said this, I have a background in BTech in information technology, and I'm an engineer, and I love embracing technology. But with my product management hat on, I have, over the course of time, learned, my experience with technology has changed and evolved. So how that has happened, why that has happened, we'll talk more about it during the course of this conversation. But keeping it short, on a personal front, I enjoy reading books. Currently hooked on to No Rules Rules, more about and Forest Enchantments. That's the other one that I'm reading. I also enjoy writing, abstract writing, painting, and drawing. So that's pretty much about me.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Mokshita. That was helpful. Nikhil, would love to hear from you about your background.
Hopefully, I'm audible as well and loud and clear.
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Nikhil. I've been a developer for a very long time, so almost 9 years. So I've worked in Cisco, Oracle, and Juniper. So those guys who are in IT doing coding for infrastructure, you guys can relate to me. I've been in roles that require operating system, that require platforms. So it's more of a hardcore technology role that I've been a developer for almost 9 years. And I moved to product management close to 4.5 years back. My role as a product manager is to build the next generation of routing products. It is more of a hardware platform, but that is to bring the internet and keep the internet together. So I build products that power up the complete internet from our service providers like Airtel and everything to cloud providers. So all those guys. My interest for product management came in during my interaction with some of the product managers, where I realized that the business and technology are at core of product management. I was always keen to be present in those business discussions and business decisions. That's when I realized that impacting the product's life cycle, the journey, the way the product looks and how it functions can really make a big difference. How we implement is very important, but also understanding why we do it and when we do it, all those make a big difference. So recently I have been trying to write a book. Fortunately, it is the same topic, transitioning from engineering to product management. I'll not take a lot of time talking about it, but that's basically for people who have been in engineering roles for 5 to 8 years or 10 years and want to move to product management. I'm trying to write a book. And second is, I love reading books. Like I have a 2-year-old, so I just keep reading the books that are like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and all those small books for now. So yeah, back to you, Arjun.
Perfect. So I think we have both book nerds in the house. It seems like both of you are really into books, and maybe that's a common theme for people who transition from engineering to product management. So good to hear that. I think let's dive into it, since again, we want to focus the session on providing as many actionable insights people can apply in their careers. Before we talk about the strategies people can execute for their transition, really want to focus on the differences, the core differences between a software engineering role and product management role. I think people can definitely Google it. There are a lot of free YouTube videos about this as well. So the way I think we can really make this valuable is, Mokshita, Nikhil, maybe you can contextualize based on your experience some of the core nuances and differences you've seen, especially when a person coming from an engineering background transitions to a product role. So Mokshita, maybe we can start with you, and you can tell us a bit about some of the key nuances, differences you've seen between the two roles.
Definitely. So I look at it as two different lenses, to solve a same problem. For an engineer, when he looks at a problem, he looks at it with a different lens, and a product manager would look at it with a different lens. But they are both trying to solve the same problem, and that's the core difference that I see between an engineer and a product manager. I'll contextualize it more with how it has become different for me from when I started my career in the industry to now. So I told that I loved embracing technology a lot. So you would often find me at hackathons. I go to a lot of hackathons and I build products there. So my first hackathon was when I was in third year of my college. I went to a hackathon and I was purely an engineer. Now at that time I got a problem statement around how do you reduce obesity in India. And as an engineer, I just started looking out for solutions. My first few questions in the mind were, how can I build a product that will reduce obesity in India? How can I make a good user interactive app which is smooth for the user to implement it or use it. So I was straight onto the solutioning, and I think that is where we engineers are structured to think. We want to execute things faster, and we want to execute and drive those technical capabilities. But today, if you ask me the same question, my first few questions in my mind would be, why do I want to create that app? Who is my customer? What is my TAM? And how can I instead of how can I implement it, I would rather think on why do I want to do it, what I want to do with it, and how can I create a user journey around it. So I might not be just developing a app at the end of the day today. I might make an ecosystem platform offering for my customer. Then I might try to integrate that solution into a gym and see if I can fit into the user lifestyle somehow. So there is a difference of thinking. When I think earlier as an engineer, I used to think more on solutioning how, and today it's more about why and what. So that's the gap that I think there is.
Got it. Okay. And Nikhil, would love to hear your thoughts on this. And especially, Mokshita shared from her perspective, the smaller context and then larger context that engineers and PMs bring to the table. You've also done something similar in terms of the transition. Can you maybe take an example, or maybe one or two examples of key areas where there's a very clear separation of responsibility apart from, let's say, coding, which obviously we know that is primarily an engineer's role.
I'll start with one thing. As a PM, your strengths are very different from a developer. As a developer, you are very good at what you do in that specific area. As a PM, you wear so many hats. It is just impossible to be good at everything. So being comfortable, not being good at everything is itself a skill. Now, I'll probably provide more details, but this is something very important to understand. Your strengths will be very different. And I was a very strong developer, and I thought that I'll make a great PM because of a strong developer or a strong technical background is not true. You need to be having so many different skill sets. Now, let me take an example. In my role today, I talk to finance. Now, when I talk to finance, I have to remove my engineering hat and wear a finance hat. They will not understand the technical aspects. Marketing team, they don't understand the finance or the engineering team. If I talk to supply chain, again, a different hat. I have to talk to the leadership, a different hat. Engineering team, a different hat. Now, my engineering background helps me very clearly communicate and understand the engineering problems. So this is where I feel the advantage of being an engineer is that you can talk to the engineering teams much easily. And second, when you talk to the customer values this. There are customers who really want to get deeper into technology and understand more. And as a developer, that is what you bring to the table as a PM. A PM with a developer background or a technical background is able to add more value in the customer meetings. That is one thing. So that's probably a strength kind of a thing that I want to probably talk about, being a developer and the PM. But the main difference, two main differences that come are that PM role is very ambiguous. It's like, at least from a developer role, you know what you have to do, and there's a timeline to it, and it's pretty much clear. If that's not defined, it's a mistake of the PM or the engineering teams to be able to clearly provide insights on where to go, right? I mean, you should be very clear. As a PM, it is very, very, very difficult to be that clear. You will be playing with a lot of data, and you will have to have a lot of communication with stakeholders to make sure to take the right decision. So overall, you're responsible for cross collaboration. I mean, cross organizational collaboration. As an engineer, you would probably be not collaborating or not driving organizations across not driving multiple departments across the organization, but as a PM, you have to. So your skill as a person who can collaborate and communicate to a larger set of different audiences and departments makes one big difference. Second is you have no authority as a PM, and this becomes very much clear as you grow in your role. You have a lot of stakeholders, and those don't report to you, nor they are having, I mean, they do have business outcomes related responsibilities, but then they are not reporting to you. So that will make a difference. I will realize in large organizations, when people don't report into you, they'll have their own agendas and things to do, which are important for their team. And if there are multiple PMs talking to the same team, it becomes very difficult. So it might sound trivial that, okay, you don't have reportees, but the business should drive itself. It does not happen. Knowing to influence without authority is probably number 1, 2 in my list. And that is not a responsibility of a developer.
Yeah, very well articulated. I think, Nikhil, both of those things that you pointed out, right? Like the role being ambiguous and then influencing without authority. I think that's something we have seen a lot of other PMs talk about as well. And, obviously it requires a specific kind of skill set as well as inclination to be able to achieve those things. Not everybody would want to even be in a role like this, right? And I think it's a reality check in some ways as well, because there are a lot of engineers out there who think of, PM role as kind of the step up in their career journey, because they want to drive products, verticals, and organizations ultimately. But, it comes with all this baggage that people may not always be ready to undertake. So I think, what you have shared is a good segue for the next thing that I want to talk about. But before I do that, just want to let everybody know in the room today that we will be taking up questions for Mokshita and Nikhil to answer in a bit. So feel free to share them in the group chat or later on, perhaps in the next 15 minutes or so. You can come up and share your question verbally as well. And yeah, so if we move on to the next topic, Nikhil, you pointed out the different nuances and differences between the roles. So when we talk about transitioning, there are definitely certain skills that you have specialized in as an engineer, right? And those form typically the core of your technical expertise, generally speaking. And then once you're transitioning to a product role, there's obviously many different nuances in terms of stakeholder management, communication, influencing, all of these things, right? So, Mokshita, I would like to understand from your perspective, what are some of these skills that you had to immediately acquire or polish as soon as you made the transition, right? Because those first few months perhaps are the most critical ones where you're feeling very out of depth and you're unsure of how to prove your merit, your talent as a new PM role. So yeah, what were some of the skills that you identified in those early days, and how did you actually build on them or polish them to become a good PM?
So I'll take top three skills that I acquired as soon as I had to transition from a engineer role. Uh, First one was more around talking to the customer, right? As an engineer, as Nikhil mentioned, you are so packaged in your own environment. You are told what you have to do. You have a set of use cases that your team tells you to deliver it technique with the technical implementation. So the first thing was to go out in the wild, talk to the customer, and they'll give you all sort of random statements which you have to decipher. So building onto my communication skills with the customer, that was the first thing that I had to sharpen myself with. Because if I get a statement on improve the user journey experience in a ride sharing app,
Yeah.
that's what they just say, and I have to decipher the next few steps. What does that conversation mean? What are my meaningful use cases that align to the vision of the product? Who is it for, and all of that. So that was the first thing. Second was to I would say again, cross team collaboration. As a tech team, you do talk to a lot of other teams as well. You talk to the testing team, you talk to the marketing team, the operations team, but the relationship with these teams are different. And as you grow up to be a PM, and where you have to collaborate with them in terms of understanding their needs as well, because now you are also responsible for solving the problems that come across cross team collaboration. So being responsible to solve those team problems, getting along with the team and getting them onto, to align to the same goal, that was another big challenge. That is where I see the most important soft skill that a PM has to learn. And then the third one was to I would say it was more around iterating the product, or what kind of a PM do I want to be. So, you get lost. You don't, you get lost when you say you are a PM. Now, I still believe there are a couple of distinctions between what kind of a PM you want to be. Are you a growth PM? Are you a tech PM? Or are you a marketing PM? So not getting lost into the jungle, and identifying the goal or the success metric, because that is very important for the product. You can build all sort of products, but what if it doesn't meet the success metric that you were trying to solve? There is a whole together different product that you'll build for a customer acquisition, and a whole sort of different product that you'll build for a customer engagement or retention. So that was the third thing, identifying what kind of a PM role am I performing on a particular product. What is the goal of my product? These were
Got
the
it.
big things that I had to immediately acquire.
Got it. And Mokshita, maybe you can, I mean, they're very helpful and very pointed things that you have shared. So I'm sure it's very helpful for everybody in the room. But maybe you can just quickly talk about some of the key ways you actually acquired these skills, right? So you pointed out the things you had to acquire, but how did you go about it? What were like some of the ways where, perhaps either within the organization or even outside the organization, you try to acquire these skills?
Uh, One of the best ways to learn how to talk to your customer or clients is to put yourself into their shoes or go out and experiment. So, I used to participate a lot in these competitions. We have the Growth X competition. You don't know, maybe you don't know anything about them, or you don't know what you are doing there. But I would just suggest that you start experimenting and start going into these competitions, participating, because there you can make a mistake there. These are competitions, you can make mistakes, you can learn, and whatever you learn from there, you can implement it better at your work. So the first thing is participate in a lot of competitions, the product management competitions. Go talk to a lot of people out there, right? When I did my first hackathon, I was paired with a doctor, and I was totally unaware. I was young, I was in third year. I didn't know how do what do you do at a hackathon. And I learned so much from there. I learned so many different perspectives. I understand my problem statement, and I talked to a couple of people around there, in that hackathon itself, and I got some viewpoints. So I believe that you go out there, participate. That's the first thing that you can do. Internally, what you can do is you reach out and seek mentors. There are existing people who have done this job, who are doing this role already. You seek for mentorship, you go out, learn what you can learn from them, because they are the people who are doing it on ground and for a long time in the same organization, and they know what works well in the organization. So you can seek mentorship. I have done that in my organization while I was trying to transition, because they are the ones who will help you shape better. So
Got it. That's helpful. And Nikhil, would like to bring
Yeah.
you in on the same question, right? In terms of the skill focus that we are talking about. So I think for Mokshita, the question was more around what were some of the initial skills you focused on, right? As you were just transitioning. I think for you, Nikhil, slightly different take on this question. Can you talk about over a period of time, once, let's say, you got a good grasp of the PM role and realize, certain things that you wanted to focus on? Like, for example, Mokshita talked about how, you could be a technical PM, you could be a growth PM, you could be a generic PM, and different kinds of hats you can wear in this role. So when you sort of started to find your niche, what were then some of the key skills that you felt would help you in the long term in your PM role?
Okay. But I just want to add one thing. I swear by mentors. Like, I mean, if you have to move to PM role in your organization, just pick a good mentor. Without a mentor, the transition is very difficult, because if you are dedicated and you get a good mentor, I think 60% of the problem is solved, actually. 60-70% of it, because you have to know what you're doing, and it's the easiest and the most difficult thing to become a PM if you know what you're doing. So just with that, I'll probably add to what you're saying, right? I've seen 3 skills which everyone keeps talking about. Prioritization, until it hurts. I mean, I just heard one of the VPs talk about it yesterday. Prioritization skill is not easy. Now, someone's asking, do you want the right leg or a left hand? Now, that's prioritization. You can pick one. Now, it gets intense and it gets tough because you have limited resources. And if you're working in an organization with unlimited resources, maybe it's different. But every organization that I have seen have resource challenges or have design challenges. So you could build a product in such a way that it can do ABC or do XYZ. It cannot do everything. There's no product that can do everything. And if it does everything, it does not do it well. So prioritization is number one thing. It's not feature, it's not like specific prioritization, but generic, right? I mean, how do you prioritize things? Your time, your features, your product, everything. If someone has to teach or learn one thing, it is prioritization. That's the thing. Second is, you don't get in large organizations, they will not put you in front of the customer until they know you're good enough. So it's very tough to get in front of the customer itself. So you have to shadow a lot of PLMs at times. So organizations allow you to shadow PMs or shadow other product managers, so you go and get to learn. Or if there are maybe a smaller set of customers who come in, then maybe that's a different case. But for large customers whom you can interact with and make a glamorous rollout of it, it really takes a lot of time and confidence from the leadership and the sales team. Sales team wants to position the best PMs that the company has in front of the customer. So maybe the skill that I've learned over a period of time is communication. I mean, after prioritization, communication is the skill. Now, this sounds very easy, right? I mean, communication, we have been doing it for so long. But when you're probably talking in mails and talking in meetings and talking face to face, it's very different. You become very emotional as a PM at times, and that emotion flows out in the meeting. So controlling your emotions and communicating is very difficult. It's a soft skill that a lot of people talk about, and it is not very natural. I was a Toastmaster for a very long time, so I thought I was good at public speaking, but I went to meetings with my agendas. I was not good. Like I let emotions run wild. Now, how do you control your emotions is something that only comes with time. Now, this may sound easy, right? I mean, go to a meeting, and if you have PMs in your meeting, you will see that communication, prioritization, and execution. Now, driving the team towards execution is your role. I mean, finally, you have to make sure that everyone aligns and we build the right product at the right time. After you have prioritized and you have communicated it 25 times or 100 times, the last thing is execution. You have to be there with the engineering teams and with everyone involved in making the product to make sure it is executed well. There are PGMs, there will be project managers, release managers, engineering leads, and everyone. But you have to be there answering those questions, because when you're executing, there will be tough questions. So you have to be able to take those decisions. So maybe I'm still improving. I've been in the role for 4.5 years. I feel these are the 3 skills which you have to talk about in depth, actually. Like, these 3 skills stand out.
For sure. Yeah, I think, again, very clear and pointed answer. So thanks for sharing that, Nikhil. And one thing that both of you have talked about, and Nikhil, you kind of made a caveat and made sure that you emphasized this, was the importance of a mentor. So obviously that is something, we are true believers in ourselves. We have a lot of mentors on our platform that help people make transitions and different kinds, not just product. But in your journey, Nikhil, what was so helpful for you to find the right mentor, or more than finding the mentor? Because I think today you have platforms like Pivot and some other places as well we can find. But how did you make sure that you made the most of your mentor? How did you get concrete feedback and then actually apply it?
Yeah. So as a mentor, I think if you can take something off the mentor's plate, like something which is not a super critical thing he's doing or he or she is doing, and you can do or help them do it, I think that's the easiest thing to do as a mentee. So what I thought was useful was that I chose a mentor who was in a role which was closer to my work related areas, and I tried supporting, answering some of the questions, doing some of the back documentation work. So I always made sure that it was a two-way relationship, right? I mean, you have to be able to, and that was easy for me because I was in a role where I could do that, like provide also some value back to the mentor. But I've seen the best way to go to a mentor is to go with specific questions and to go very, very specific. Like, I mean, you do a side project, take the side project to the mentor. Do not go asking, hi mentor, what are skills that I can develop and all that. Do a side project. I did a small Excel based product, which was for business related. Like it was back then 2018, where you could biometric login, log out. I thought that was cool back then. It's still cool, I feel. But the most important part is I went with that Excel and asked for feedback. Now go with your work to ask for feedback. You have enough resources online today to start a basic side project. Do that, go to the mentor and ask them, how can this be a business idea? I think Mokshita also touched upon it, right? Hackathons, great places to start. But if you don't have a side project, if you are not invested, and you don't have to do this fancy technical side project, do a very small side project, go with the feedback. This has worked wonders. And I've got inputs like, okay, your technical aspects are very well covered. You wrote the requirements pretty well, but you did not capture the value. Like, okay, now you have to do assumptions on business case. if you have 100 users and each of them paying 2 rupees, then you have 200 rupees in 1 year. How do you grow that to 300? And how do you reach 500 rupees in next 3 years? All those have to be called out. So business case with a side project is easily the best thing you can take to your mentor, the best thing you can talk in your interview, the best thing you can talk about in the social forums as well. So that makes you stand apart. And that's what I feel is important.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, I think it's mentorship is a two-way street, and I think the points you touch, shows that it's not just about getting value from the relationship, but also contributing yourself, where you can help the mentor in different ways. One of the questions we have here from one of the audience members, Kumar, Mokshita, the question is in the chat. I don't know if you can see it, but it's a very important yet a straightforward question. Mostly, Kumar is asking, what are some of the key stepping stones that you've leveraged to move from engineering, especially from a QA role to a PLM role? And this is obviously very like a context specific role, the QA one. So what would you advise to somebody who is in a QA role, trying to move to a PM
role? Okay. So what I would advise is that, whenever you're trying to transition from a role to another role, it's going to be difficult and you have to accept it, right? It's not just about having a validated degree or a certification or a specialization with you that will prove your worth, but it's also making sure that you convince your interviewer that you can do that job very well, right? When I was transitioning, and I obviously had a BTech degree, the first thing that I did was to get myself a validated degree or a specialization in product management. So I did that course. I did it alongside I was working, right? So I did that 3 to 4 month specialization in product management, had that degree, had my product portfolio ready. So when I started giving out interviews, I had a degree in place. That's the basic requirement. I had a product portfolio to convince my interviewer that this is the kind of work that I've done. Now comes to the part where you are speaking to the interviewer directly, right? And they challenge you with questions, right? And that is where you have to prove your worth. And if you are able to crack it, it's very easy to transition from QA or from a software developer to a product manager. So how can you make sure that you crack that interview? I would give you one advice. While you are at your role, and if you are a QA, you are already working on a product and you're testing it, you are validating if whatever is built is working fine or not. So when you are doing that quality control, do a step further. Go ask yourself, why was this particular feature added to the product? What does it solve? Why is this a requirement? Who are we solving it for? Why are we making this feature for A and not for B? Why was A more important to get this feature and not B? And then when you get those questions right, you answer yourself. If you get the answers from yourself, it's good. If you don't, go up and talk to your product manager, go up and talk to your tech lead, talk to your business analyst and gather their views. So in this way, you would understand the product. And this is how I started transitioning. So when I was working on a product from a software developer's lens, I started looking at it from a holistic view and understanding, why are we even building it? Why am I investing so much time coding on Java or Python to get this feature on board? And I started talking to my PMs, and I started keeping bi-weekly or monthly calls depending upon the time of the people in the team, one to understand their view. And that has helped me a lot, because that gave me the knowledge to be, to understand the product and convince my interviewer eventually.
Okay.
And just one follow-up question to that, Mokshita, just very quickly. Would you suggest that somebody from QA background, go to, let's say, a boot camp or perhaps even business school to transition? And that's a very recurring question we get, by the way, from a lot of people thinking about moving from engineering to PM is, do I need a business school degree or can I just do it without that? And if I'm doing without it, what kind of courses should I be taking? Like, there are plenty of these boot camps today. which are focused on helping you get into product management, but they come with different kinds of programs, right? So what would you suggest a person with that kind of background chooses for upskilling and transition?
I would suggest, honestly, if you ask me, people don't even see your degree when you are in an interview. If you solve their problem, if you solve the interviewer's problem, you get through the interview. So degree is, as I said, is a validation, but it is not necessary. Of course, I've not done an MBA in product management, or I've not done a specific degree, but I've done a boot camp, a specialization, right? A certificate, and nobody asked me for that degree in the interview at all. Nobody ever asked me for it, but that gives you an experience. And I would still suggest that if you can find yourself some time, go invest that time in that learning, because you learn the hardcore skills, you learn the frameworks, you learn how to think like a product manager. I would always give a thumbs up to go invest your time in learning in some specialization or certification. That really helps you out there. um, Sorry, I forgot the second part of the question. So
No, it was just this around
this,
primarily like whether you would recommend people go to business
I
school
would,
or
I would on a personal level, I would, because it helps you sharpen your skills as a product manager. But nobody sees it. Honestly, nobody sees it. Nobody asks you for a degree in an interview. You just have to you have to learn those skills. Now, either if you're confident, go to the YouTube channel. There are so many materials available online. You read and learn from there. You crack an interview, very good. If you think you can't do it and you need an experiential learning in classrooms, because there you work around with your peers, you'll work around with a lot of other peoples who challenge you as well, and
right,
that is how you learn from their learnings as well. So
right.
that's
Nikhil,
another.
would love to bring you in on this one because that's it's a very common question we get, and I'm sure perhaps in US also it's fairly common, right? Engineers thinking about going to business school. I mean, if you look at some of the the large tech company CEOs today, they are all most of them are product of some engineering school and then a business school. So there is this narrative floating around that to learn the technical skills you go to engineering school, and sometimes even get a master's, and then you go to B school to pick up the business side of things. What's your take on this, right? For engineers and QAs thinking about transition.
First thing, probably I'll structure my answer in this way. MBA is not a must. I have not done my MBA. MBA is not a prerequisite to be a PM. It's not. But I also want to highlight, I've seen this trend of late. People with less experience who want to move into PM roles quite early in their career, MBA has helped most of them. If you are early in your career and you've done an MBA in a reputed college in India, I've seen a lot of my junior folks with 2 to 4 years of experience get into the product role. Now, there are advantages to it because you get into the PM role quite early. The only downside I see is that I feel that in the long run, you should be able to differentiate yourself. And I feel my technical skills, which I've developed over a period of 7, 8 years or 10 years, is what stands out sometimes. And that helps me move. But it might help me move in an IC role. But if I have to move in a senior director or a VP role, it might be totally different. So yes, MBA helps if you're early in your career. If you want to make the move, MBA has I mean, if you do it from a reputed college in India, I've seen at least 7, 8 friends of mine who are junior to me in the office have moved. But do you need an MBA? Answer is no. But with an MBA, yes. Second is the boot camp. Boot camps are very helpful, actually. I mean, since you don't know what exactly, if you're very new and you don't know anything about PM role, I think a boot camp helps. I didn't do a boot camp to move to PM role. I did it after I moved to the PM role. But I felt that if you do a PM role, if you do a boot camp, and I don't want to name anything specific, there are a lot of boot camps in India also where you get a chance to talk to other people who are doing the role, or who are trying to get into the role. Doing a small project along with 10 people makes a difference. So if you can do a boot camp, do a boot camp. And now to your question, I think from a QA role, I think QA is a better PM than a developer being a PM. It's a controversial statement, but because developers are deep in one area, I was a very good developer in one specific area, but QA are generally a little more broader, I feel, solution oriented. And that way, a PM should be solution oriented, should be more broad. And I've seen in my team, there were some PMs who were from the QA background who were able to pick up the end-to-end solution much faster than the people who are deeper. Now, in my customer engagements, I can go deep, but when I had to go broad, I had to rely on other PMs. That's where I feel a QA, and I think Mokshita covered it pretty well. I mean, ask those tough questions. But if you're a QA, when you test end-to-end and report what the competition also is doing. This is where I feel if you want to be a PM from a QA, see what the competition is doing and tell your PM the competition is doing this, why aren't you doing it? Now, if you, I feel a lot of PMs will respond to asking questions and setting up meetings. It's a very good way of doing it, but tell them, guys, a competition is doing it. Just use your number one competitor and tell this is what the competition is doing. Why aren't you doing it? And set up a meeting with the PMs, and they'll come to the meeting. Generally, they would not, but if you ask this exact tough questions and put them on a spot, then they do come. And a QA, like remember, the QA is the most important step because you have to have the right tested solution for the user or the customer. In our case, it's complex technology products. So if you have experience across different areas and as a QA, you can add a lot of value. It's much more deeper answer, but yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the key things that both of you have highlighted is kind of taking initiative and interest in showcasing your curiosity for things beyond just QA, right? So QA is not necessarily the organic path to a PM role. You kind of have to go above and beyond where you ask the right questions about the product, about the market, use cases, etc. And that's how you build your credibility and your skill set. I think that makes a lot of sense, and we've covered some of the things about boot camps, upskilling, and those as well. We'll perhaps get into it later. We are starting to get a lot of good questions now, so I'll cover those in just a second. One of the key things that we typically hear a lot from people thinking about a PM role is designing this portfolio when they're starting their job search. And I think Mokshita, I believe you just referred to it, at the time. That building a portfolio can really help you understand different things about the product, but more than that, showcase your skill set to potential employers. So, before we talk about job search strategies and how to really stand out from competition, what are some of the things you did to build your portfolio? So, for example, coming up with the right product idea to cover, and then the structure and format for your case study or tear down, whatever it is. And then ultimately, I think the most essential thing is to use that portfolio to land a role. So how did you actually translate it from just this document that is existing with you to something that the hiring manager or recruiter look at and suddenly have that aha moment that, oh, this person might be a good fit? So can you maybe cover some of these things? And then Nikhil, we'll get your thoughts on it as well.
Sure. I got my product portfolio done during my boot camp that I was doing. And when it was a part of my assignment, I would actually say they asked us all to make a product portfolio, and trust me, I felt it was a burden at that time because I didn't know where to start, what to do, what does a product portfolio include. But when I started that journey, and it took me some time, it took me 1.5 months to get a right product portfolio ready. There were a lot of iterations. So when you are designing your product portfolio, right, it's more about telling people about yourself through the products that you have built, your experiences and your journey. There are a lot of websites available. You can make it on Figma, Canva, you can do it on Wix. I made my one on Wix. So a lot of no-code websites where you can create your product portfolios. Now, what kind of a product portfolio you're building depends upon what type of a person you are and you're trying to project. So my product portfolio also had a section which said resume. And I added a video recorded of me in the metaverse. So I tried to relate myself to a brand, and I was in that resume I was telling why do I relate myself to an XYZ brand, and this is me and this is why I built so many products, that story. So I built my resume on a metaverse because I was trying to relate myself to the brand Meta. And I was trying to tell them that I'm a creative person and I build creative products. I understand my users and I try to connect all the dots. And that is where I showed my creativity, that, because I relate myself to Meta, I am building it on a metaverse. And that was one part of it. So it's more about what kind of a person you are and what kind of qualities that you want to show. It's your place. You can play around on that playground. I've also seen a lot of product portfolios which look like a game, and that, I think almost all these boot camps show those product portfolios where you can navigate through a product portfolio and it's a game. So there are a lot of websites you can experiment, fiddle around, play, and find out what fits right for you. But it will not be in the first iteration. It will take a couple of iterations for you to get the right portfolio there. uh, the next thing that you asked was, how do you make sure that it's a aha moment, right? I deliberately made an attempt to show my interviewer that, see, this is what I've added and you should look at it. If you keep doing a lot of stuff and if you don't show up it in the interview, it won't help, right? Nobody will come up and ask you that, please present your screen and show me a product portfolio. Even if you have sent them over email, nobody ever sees that. So I generally make an attempt to show people what I've done. And when you visually show people what you have done, they get attracted. Visuals are important rather than what you are speaking. So I did that attempt in my interviews. I showed them that, can I take a moment to share my screen and I want to show you something. So that's what I did. And there's one more thing that I want to leave the audience with is that, if you are not getting automatic interview calls for product management, start sending out cold emails. I've done that. It works. I sent out around 50 to 80 cold emails. That's not huge. People send a lot of cold emails at a go, but I sent around 50 in one batch and 30 in another. So around 80 cold emails, and I did get a response back. I got responses back from companies like Apollo, big brands. So, if you can send out cold emails and you get responses, and that's your chance to prove yourself.
Amazing. Thanks for that detailed answer, Mokshita. Very helpful. Nikhil, let's quickly cover your thoughts as well, and then I would love to move on to some of the questions we are getting from the audience.
So I think three things. I mean, I think there was like, you shouldn't, if you know Excel, basic Word, and basic PPT, that's a lot of things. Like I feel like these three things are your weapons as you become a good PM, right? Again, if you're user defined, if you're building an app with user experience and clicking, it's a little different. But I'm talking from a more technology, and if you're more B2B, who's talking to businesses, then if I felt that you don't have all the skills. You don't have writing skills. You may not have the skills to build an Excel altogether, or skills to even do a presentation. I mean, all the skills will not be there. This is where the journey starts. I feel if you can write a requirement document, maybe a 5-page or 2-page or 3-page, a little bit detailed on what the requirements of a product should look like. It doesn't have to be, if it can be the product in your own company and write a little bit about it, that's great. Like, that's always preferred. I felt in my organization, there were opportunities to move to the PM role, and I'm thankful to that. So that's when my strategy was to move internal. Now, if you have to move external to your company, the strategies vary a lot. But if you have to move internal to the company, my strategies were to understand the product portfolio a bit better and write a requirement document, because the requirement document is already available. Try to see what you could build the next product with. There's business cases available already. If you have access to them, try to understand them and try to build a business case for the next product. Now you don't have access to information like total addressable market, how your customer base looks like. All that gets very tough. So maybe you can start very basic, try to understand what your product is, try to compare it with the competition. That also is a good start. I mean, I feel competitive advantages or analysis that can be done helps a lot. So start with two to three things. One is maybe write a small requirement document of existing feature or existing product. Try to build a small business case, and it's not easy to build a business case for a B2B. And maybe finally, it is to do with try to do a competitive analysis on an Excel. Try to do analysis. That helps.
Thanks for sharing that, Nikhil. Just because we don't have a lot of time left, I'm just going to move on to some of the questions we have here. So Bhaskar has put his question forward with regard to what's the best way to truly understand about a product, especially with the focus on the cons of the product. If you are representing as a PM and the goal is to proactively set expectations with stakeholders about the long-term advantages of the product. So, okay, that's an interesting question. I think what we are trying to really get to here is if you are, let's say, starting out as a new PM, what are some of the ways to really get a deep understanding of the product, right? I'm assuming both the positives and the negatives, even though positives get highlighted more. So I think Bhaskar's point is, to understand some of the key criticisms or downsides that you're going to be told by your unhappy or dissatisfied customers out there. So Mokshita, do you want to take a stab at this one?
Sure. So what are the best ways to understand about the product? I would suggest start with the 5 whys framework. There are a lot of frameworks out there, but start with the 5 whys. Ask your customers the question, why do you want it? And then when they give an answer, ask another why, and then another why. So the 5 consecutive whys. That really helps you to come down to that real requirement and get to a use case. So that is one thing. Another thing that I feel is you should have a conversation with your customer frequently. A lot of feedback and iterative process. You cannot go with the waterfall method where you take a requirement, go build it, test it, and come back to your customer after a month or two, and they say, this is not what we wanted. It actually happens, right? Maybe they wanted an aeroplane and they started by describing, I want 4 wheels to a device that helps me transfer a person from one place to another. So what if you built a car? So you have to keep iterating with your customer, come back and forth to really understand what they want, recurring meetings with them. So I think these 2 points are something that you can really look out for.
Nikhil, any thoughts on if a person, let's say, doesn't have immediate access to customers? Obviously, that is the holy grail, right? You want to speak to your target users and have tens of conversations, do the 5 whys, all of that, right? In case you don't have that, you're starting out as an APM. You mentioned earlier that the best organizations would not put you in front of the customer on day one, right? What do you do to understand the problem?
Yeah. So now it depends on the organization structure, but if you have a GTM team, the go-to-market team, those represent the customer, those are great people. And I'll tell you that you will hear the problems day one. I mean, people will tell you so many times, you will not forget them. So it is sometimes, you have to be deaf not to listen to them. I mean, people will come and tell you the problems, but they may be not telling directly to you. They may be telling someone else in your team. So you have to make sure that you are part of those aliases and talking to the right people in the go-to-market teams for the customers to see what the challenges are. Now, maybe first 6 months, I didn't know what the problems were. It was not very evident. But when I started talking to the go-to-market teams, when I started talking to areas where those go-to-market teams were asking tough questions, I mean, there should be a place in the organization where the go-to-market teams ask questions to everyone. Like, there should be some mechanism of doing it. So those are areas where I went and listened to problems that the go-to-market team had. Second is advantages. Yes, I mean, you need to understand the value proposition, but understanding the problems helps you know what the answers are. Like knowing your problems, I think this is a great question, Bhaskar, and I really love the question, because knowing your problems before going to meeting the customer is the right strategy. Advantages, even the sales team and other teams can highlight, but when there are problem questions, everyone will look at you. Like they'll look at the PM and tell, okay, this is a problem. What do you do about it now? Now you need to have a coherent, true answer, right? I mean true because you cannot tell the whole story. Now there will be reasons why you do certain things. Now you need to have a coherent story that aligns well with the market, aligns well with the customer. So going well prepared to the customer's meeting with the GTM team is one of the right things to do. And knowing the problems day one is the best thing that can happen. you cannot solve them, but at least explaining why I'm in this state. And I've had customers ask me those tough questions, and I told them, we are here because of these supply chain problems, and everyone else is facing it. This is not specific to our organization. So being honest and being very transparent sometimes helps. And customers do understand. They are very reasonable, but they want to understand the background of why we're doing this.
Amazing. Nikhil, I think the next question is something we can just cover with you, because I think it's a good segue for what we were just talking about. You just talked about like how in the absence of access to your customers, you can reach out to the GTM teams, right? Who will have a lot of the feedback collected from the customers directly, and they will have their pulse on what's working, what's not. So I don't know what the name is, but I know Mr. Jain here has a question, and his question is about, can a person in a customer success role find it possible to transition to a PM role, right? I think the high level answer, I'm just going to take a wild guess, is yes, because of what you just said, right? But can you maybe explain a little bit in detail what a person who has that GTM customer success hat on, what kind of other things they should be doing to transition to a PM role?
Yeah. So I mean, mostly almost any role we can move to the PM role, like that's possible. And customer success role is a better role to move to a PM role. And I tell that with real sincerity, because you are the person who's responsible for success of the customer. This is a post-sales role. Once the sales is complete, the sale is important for the dollars to come in, the money to business to come in, but then the customer has to be also successful. So you work as a customer success person closely with the customer to deploy the solution, to understand their problems during deployment and be part of their success, right? I mean, this is a great role. To be a PM, you should know your customers' problems and your success. So if you have access to making your customer successful, I feel that maybe the parts of business would not be clear to you, because in the customer success story, the monetization aspect is done. You have closed the deal and all that has happened. Now you're focusing on more of the logistics of how the devices or how the solutions arrive, how do you bring them up and all that. But at least you know 50 to 60% of the customer. And that is, I would love anyone who has had a good experience in customer success role to move to a PM role, because whatever value you can add, sometimes we are blindsided. Once the deal is closed, we focus on the next new deal because we have already won it, right? I mean, if you have already won a specific customer, then you focus on the next customer or next use case. But having that experience helps. So customer success roles are, I mean, I feel it's a very good role if you want to move to a PM role.
I actually echo what Nikhil says, right? Because the customer success roles, these people help keep the pipeline open. So for us, when you deliver a project, we think the deal is closed and it's won. But if these people are not there, we can't reiterate back. So they keep the pipeline hot and open for further engagement. So I think they are close to the customers, and it's halfway the job done if you understand the customer and you know their requirements.
Yeah. I mean, even from a growth perspective, right? Like if there is a person in sales or, the revenue generation part of the firm, even then, I think it's in their interest to work closely with the customer success team, because, of future revenue opportunities through upselling, cross-selling, referrals. I mean, you don't get referrals unless your existing customers are happy with what you have given, right?
Yeah.
So definitely a lot of potential for transitioning.
Yeah. So sorry, that's a great point. If you can help cross-sell or upsell as a customer success role, that's the business aspect of it. And thanks for highlighting it, right? I mean, you are part of the technical journey. If you can understand the customer problem and upsell or cross-sell, that's like the killer thing you can do. And that's like landing a PM role or landing even a sales role much easily. Yeah, that's a good one.
Absolutely. Hey, I know we have overshot our time, so I do want to cover this one last question quickly. If Mokshita and Nikhil, it's okay with you. We have Taj who has shared this question. I think it's a very good question, and one that brings this whole workshop to a full circle, because we started by talking about some of the key skills that a PM role requires, and communication was highlighted by everybody, and it's pretty well known, right? That it's a requisite. How do you actually improve it? Because we've been doing it, like Nikhil said, we've been doing it all our lives, right? So it seems easy. But how do we actually become effective communicators as PM and then showcase that during our interview? Mokshita, we'll start with you.
I think communication is a journey. You learn while you do it, right? I might be a very good orator, and I used to be an orator in school and colleges. So you can be a very good orator, but it's totally a different game when you are in front of your customer or in front of an interviewer. As Nikhil said, he used to be a toastmaster, and it's totally a different scale, because you just don't need to speak a speech there. You actually have to resonate what you are speaking as well, right? You have to make a point there to your customers. So yesterday itself I had a customer meeting, and I was in an event, so I had to take that call from my phone with headphones on, and there was noise all around, and find myself a quiet place as well. So and this customer meeting was around us with a sports conglomerate, and I am not a person who is deep dive into the sports and gaming industry, but I was still proposing them a pitch. So what you can do to be a good communicator is ask a lot of questions. So if you don't know something, just don't make it up. uh, Ask questions, they'll give you some answers, build on top of that. That is one of the skills that you can, that helps you improve and become a better communicator in such meetings. And it works in an interview as well. So when an interviewer asks you a question that, can you tell me how do I increase my sales for this company because they are dropping for the past 2 months, you have to ask him back, are you looking at mobile, are you looking at online sales, or are you looking at website sales, or is it mobile, or talk about, ask questions, and then that will lead to an answer.
I think that's a great point. Just a quick thing, Nikhil, and then I'll turn it over to you. When I was in my prior job, so I worked in management consulting. Obviously, there are some overlaps between consulting and product management, I would say, especially with regard to having good communication skills. And I used to, really fret, to be very honest, when I was a 20-year-old just starting my career, how to talk in front of these 50-year-old clients, right, where you find yourself out of depth. And one of the things that my mentors at that time told me was, Mokshita, very similar to what you just said, right? She just said that you need to be on calls or in meetings, not necessarily always talking, but doing just two things: listening and asking for the context or asking for the right questions, right? And over a period of time, it might take a few months, it might take a couple of years, but you will see, when you see other people respond or to different questions, you will start to find your own voice as well. And that's when the journey that you described of communication becomes easier. So I think you beautifully captured that, Mokshita, and I hope people really understood that point about asking the right questions. Nikhil, over to you.
I mean, this is a tough one, because I feel, where can you fail at communication, right? I mean, where can you safely fail at communication? There's not a lot of places. So how do you actually practice that skill? In that way, I feel Toastmasters helped me. I could fail a few times and then keep building on top of it. But outside of that, communication skills is two parts. I mean, I think you pretty, Mokshita, and you covered it well. Join those meetings where you're not talking, and look at the people whom you really respect and adore, right? I mean, listen to how they respond and how they communicate. Maybe you cannot have every skill that they have, but try to see what important things they have. I feel some people are very good at storytelling, and some people are good with energy. I mean, like, they just come on the stage and bring a lot of energy. And some people are very good at storytelling. So what is your area that you want to improve on? Now, even in communication, it is so vast that you can't go on a stage and have an experience, and it's pretty tough. So what I can say is, maybe focus on the specific communication skills that you want to develop. Maybe develop a storytelling skill, or maybe develop a detailed email, right? I mean, even mailing is a communication skill. Like, writing a good mail is a communication skill. So if you want to be talking, before talking, listen and listen and listen for as long as you can, And after a couple of months, start talking. It'll make a lot more sense, because to add value, I got this example sometime back. Only when you deposit money in the bank, you can take it out. Like if there's no money in the bank, you can't take it out. So you have to first start listening and accumulate value, and then you can start throwing it out, or maybe start pushing it out. And how to showcase that during the interview? The interviews are pretty smart, actually. They'll know that how good of a communication you are. And everything is not communication. There are so many other aspects to it. But if you can click the communication aspect, that does cover a lot of things.
Perfect.
Yeah, back to you.
Okay, I think we have covered all the questions and most of the topics as well. I think it's time to wrap this up. Just want to thank Mokshita and Nikhil, both of you, again for joining and sharing a lot of great insights, very practical, very targeted. It shows that not only have you made a successful transition, you definitely prepared for this session. So thank you for doing that. Right. And thanks to everybody who joined us today. I hope you got some good insights. We will be putting this out on our social media channels and YouTube as well in a couple of days. Till then, what I would suggest is please go ahead and check out our website, Pivot. It's the link is in the chat. It's mypivot.work. You can reach out to mentors like Mokshita and Nikhil there in case you want one-on-one guidance or any feedback even with regard to your own transition. They have helped many others in achieving these kind of successful transitions and landing their target roles. So thanks again for joining, everyone. And Mokshita, Nikhil, especially you both, I would love to perhaps do this again in the future.
Thank you, Arjun, for having us here. Would love to do it again.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Have a great day, great evening. Bye.
Bye.
Yes. Bye, everyone.